get that clarity today. We've never lost compact. What happens is that we didn't pass last year. We now passed this year. So, before we go into all, and I just wanted to say that we have had a history with MCC. MCC is a Millennium Challenge Corporation. It's a wonderful development assistance program because it's targeting the private sector. It's one of the very rarest in the world where they look at objective criteria. They believe that we have to relax constraints of the private sector. The thing that matters, they believe the country has 200 million, 200 problems, 500 problems, all countries. You want to take the problem that has the biggest impact and solve it. So in Liberia here, we determined that roads and electricity were the biggest. We saw access to finance and education. You know education, World Bank just came over a report on human capital development. Our challenge, at the time we did that, roads and electricity are constrained. So this is why this government and the previous government continue to focus on those two things. See, the president doing a lot of roads.
Roads and education.
See, and the roads and electricity.
Okay.
Infrastructure was the binding constraint. That's what we found. So MTC made the investment in the McCoffey Hydro, all right, and then look at road infrastructure support through the road fund and all of that. So so we've got that history. Now, what does this mean? We passed the MCC. Let me say a big thanks to His Excellency Dr. George Manneh Weah for extraordinary leadership. We would not be passing were it not for the president's insistence and the president's pressure. People don't see the president's pressure. We see the president's pressure every day. We talk to him, we engage him, and we see the relentless pursuit of progress that he exhibits. So had it not been for that, we would not be where we were. Let me say a big thanks to all of the government. This is a collective government effort. Last year, the president declared that because there was a lot of propaganda about the government governance, the president declared the year of governance in 2022, and that all heads of entities had to hunker down and get the governance right. So we've been on the path for the last 2 years since we entered the IMF program, over the last 2 years, to perfect governance. Because in 2018, the rap on our government was that, oh, you guys don't follow rules. Oh, you guys, you don't like procurement process. You just do things arbitrarily. You go around people, you go Washington, you hear that rap. And we've been pushing back on all of those things. We've been showing the progress that we're making. But sometimes I come on the radio, I talk, president delivers speeches, everybody talking, It's like the biggest thing for the MCC, why it's true that it puts us on the path to getting a second compact to me, an even bigger thing for the country and for the government than maybe getting a compact. I love the compact. We're working to get that. But the reputational change that this pass has meant for the country, there are people who call me and say, we're not being paying attention to Liberia. People are recently sanctioned and all kinds of things. I mean, the whole place going underground. When I look at the scorecard, it's a different narrative. It tells me, okay, but the narrative that we've been getting from people about Liberia going backward is not supported by the data. And when we look at the data points, it's not one, we see consistent pattern of improvement. Okay. So there were efforts over 2-3 years period. The word MCC has just put Liberia's governance on the globe. That is the biggest thing. It's put the president's reputation on the globe that, this man appears to be enhancing governance in the country and transforming Liberia, and the data has picked that up. Prior to this, we've had the IMF reports that have been saying the same thing. We see consistent consolidation of fiscal policy and monetary policy. We see inflation down, but the IMF reports have been critical, but I don't think the country have revolved around the IMF report. So the intellectuals, the Clarence Jacksons, the T-Max, the Jacob Jala, you are the guys who are reading these reports, Waka Jaliba, we understand. Those people who know the reports and they can analyze it, they don't want. The ordinary market people don't know what it means. Okay. I tell you, I think on Sunday, a group of women came to my house to say thanks to the president and the government for nobody ever came to my house for IMF report. Nobody ever came for even the US fiscal transparency report that we passed. Nobody ever came. But I saw about 20 women saying, I said, Mr. Thank you for the government, the MCC scorecard. My wife asked, what do you know about the MCC scorecard? Well, what we know from the community now is that the government, a lot of the lies about the government are not true. That's what the scorecard is saying. Everybody's saying the government making progress. I'm like, wow. It says how big MCC scorecard has become in Liberia and in Liberian politics. So, in as much as I celebrate the past for the fact that we have a chance of getting the compact, which we're talking to, it's provided a new relief for people in Washington, D.C., for people in Brussels. I mean, we've been talking about budget support. The European ambassadors told me, they said, you know what, there's a strong performer. We got to think about this, anchor this to your budget support. So this could give us some edge with the European Union in getting additional budget support for the country. Wonderful leadership with the president. George Weah is a blessed man, and I'm so happy to serve him as Minister of Finance. Yeah.
T-Max?
Did you ever think the whole MCC process was as serious as it is until Liberia passed now, or what?
Look, if you ask me my modality, I would tell you MCC, because they're attacking the private sector. So as an economist, I believe in the MCC model. Yeah, it's not arbitrary. They say, the data say we should invest in road. The data say we should invest in education. So scientifically, that's where policy should go as a binding constraint. So I believe in the methodology, and I know the methodology. So I have taken MCC process just as an individual very serious. Coming into the government, the president and the government have taken this thing serious. The president always joked that they may, MCC may, LEC may. So sometimes all the problem in the LEC, the president puts it on me because he said, these are the guys who... So we accept that, and, he's a humorous person. But we've taken MCC process very serious. The president even went and joked, so look, this thing here is the way the scoring our government. Let's face it, because the scorecard came up for within, but the president said, look, this is an assessment on our government. We have to double down. And then we began to doubling down, looking at some of the reasons you feel sometimes are because of, you're not reporting the right data. We've been fighting on data issues with different entities. The thing about MCC scorecard, MCC doesn't control the scorecard. The scorecard is aggregated from all over and it's compiled by MCC into their thing. So many institutions, Heritage Foundation, the World Development Indicators is a global syndicate of an index, a conglomeration of data points that they put together observing countries. So the government has taken the MCC thing very serious. The president, going to an election, any president would want to pass. Thank God we're passing 1 year before election, but this pass means a lot. I think what we're doing now is the president, under his leadership, is going to engage the Millennium Challenge Corporation with the help of the United States Ambassador, U.S. Embassy here, to see how we prepare the country to meet the board the board of directors of the MCC. The board is chaired by the American Secretary of State. So passing does not mean you have a compact. That's another clarification. Passing means you get a chance to be taken. So you have to first pass. You have to get to pass. You first have to pass corruption. Obviously, you cannot pass MCC if you don't pass control of corruption. So if you pass 19 indicators and fail control of corruption, you do not pass.
Wow.
So it's not just the number 12 over 20. You must pass control of corruption to be considered.
Okay.
All right. So it's a must that you pass among all the indicators. So the whole idea is that, what that pass signal is that over time, the countries, they're ranking Liberia along with other countries. So it's not, MCC is not just looking at one country, you're looking at how you're comparing with your other countries, the median average. And that's the score we get for corruption. We have to do a lot more in the fight against corruption. You know the efforts that we are making. You're aware of the LACC law, all right? We'll come to some of that, maybe the new LACC law, what the power it gives the new commissioners, to the extent that the President of the Republic of Liberia cannot remove any commissioner without the vote of the senators. That's huge. What that says is that the constitutional prerogative and rights enjoyed by a president, right, are not exercised under the LACC law, because he has to then refer to the Senate to remove. So that means these people are going to be independent, objective. They are recruited objectively. And that's a huge step.
Mr. Minister, I know we'll come down so that we don't lose control of, the indicators for the compact will come to that. Like you rightly said, to benefit the compact, a country must pass the scorecard. Now, it is difficult to politicize that process because it is data driven. I want to say that way. But the real politics sometimes is, making your case, before the ball, your application process and all these kinds of things. And as the head, the Minister of Finance and head of the eligibility steering committee, for example, for Liberia, what are you doing at this moment? What is our country doing so that we sustain this scorecard in order to prepare us, benefit another compact?
Yeah, so the work in progress for the next pass, which is coming next year. So significant, and I can tell you, given the visibility that this scorecard has brought, I can tell you, many more agencies of government are conscious now. I mean, they were conscious, but I can tell you, everybody more conscious. And I was on Spoon. I said we're going to pass 12. I don't want to make a prediction here, but I believe we should be passing 14 next year. We're looking at areas where we're almost passing. The World Bank report said we got to invest in human capital, and the American Ambassador release just talked about investing in people. So this is an area where reprogramming the ways we're looking at investment in education, early childhood, primary, textbooks. It's not just infrastructure, but other things that will make children learn. So we're looking at all of those, the Ministry of Education on top of that. So in terms of passing next year, we show we're going to pass. What is important right now for the short term is that the board meets next month to consider Liberia. We have to make, under the leadership of the president, a compelling case to MCC board. The president of Liberia will write a letter to the Secretary of State making a case for Liberia about why Liberia deserved it. He will probably cite the historic relationship between Liberia and the United States. He will cite the fact that Liberia stands with America in democracy and human rights. This is one of the reasons why the president was invited to Washington. He'll be going December. And then he was also invited next year, February, for the Biden Democratic. Only select African leaders who are strong democracies were invited. You go back to the American Ambassador's statement on July 4. His praise of Liberia being a democratic bastion, a democratic exception in the region. Okay. So that's the case we're going to put to Liberia. The president is going to put the effort he's making to fight corruption. He's going to document. He's also going to document the efforts we've made to keep up the compact. We hired, under the mandate of the president, we hired a consultant who used to work with MCC to look at compact-related issues. So all of the issues, all of the entities, whether it's LWSC, the Ministry of Public Works, the road, the asset base that MCC invested in, we have to pay attention to continue to make sure American tax dollars work. So we have to make a compelling case that there were challenges. We've resolved some of those challenges. LEC is the big part. Power theft, look, I'm telling you, the IMF mission is in town. Before meeting the managing director of LEC, they were telling me, Mr. Minister, you're not going to spend $40 million on power that comes into the electricity pool and then gets stolen. I mean, it looks like you're giving LEC free money, and I mean, we're going to fight you on that. So you got to tie the hand of Mr. Moni Capitan. You can't get, he got to show you a plan. I said, we're working on that. They went and met Mr. Capitan. When they came back, their opinion changed. They was like, you know what, we're putting you under pressure, but we met the man himself. We see that. That's what the president's going to document, about the progress being made to turn LEC into a viable entity, because the American government is concerned about that since they made an investment in that space. By the time the president does that, the president is going to demonstrate a pattern, of governance improvements, consistency, the outlook, what we've done through COVID-19, how we stabilized the macro. The president has achieved, I'm saying as an economist, probably the fastest collapse of inflation in recorded history. 31%, now inflation is down 7%. You can't have that collapse. Everybody is asking, what is Liberia doing different? I mean, because Liberia looks like an exception. All right, at the World Bank in the annual meeting, we told the story of Liberia. The president is going to outline all of that in his letter of request for a compact to the Secretary of State, to the MCC leadership.
Mr. Minister,
beyond that, let me put
I want to speak on this.
All Liberians, but let me finish that. All Liberians have to line up behind the government now, because MCC compact is not a political thing.
Okay.
It's a development thing. When the money comes, whether it's for education, roads, power, it's for all Liberians. So all Liberians have to be proud of this moment. This is not about, CDC or Unity Party or ANC. It's a collective movement of the country. No Liberian should go out there to lobby against MCC board not granting compact. We're appealing to all honest Liberians. We call them pastors and bishops to have prayer sessions for the country. So
prayer session will not change the score.
No, the score is already changed. The score is already changed. Next year, I said we pass. So they're not praying for us to pass. We have passed.
Okay.
They are now praying for us to, for the board to consider us. And I've said the president is not going to say we're praying. The president is going to say what we have done, what we will do. He will show the data.
Do we know how much money is involved?
We're hoping.
Let me get to this because the Millennium thing has got to be the only thing that we make noise about. It's being trumpeted all over the place. And I think the minister and his team should be very, very careful how you control people's expectation as to the result that we're getting today. It is in my mind, I hope people understand that is not a huge thing. If you look at our scorecard last year, and where we are now is not that a gigantic jump to where it is. Though we are in the we better off now than we were yesterday. But the minister said something which I want.
What do you mean it's not a gigantic jump? This is an interactive thing. No, hold on.
You hold on.
We move from 9 to 12. What do you mean it's not gigantic?
If you do the arithmetic, it's 12 over 20. Arithmetic.
Yeah, so we were 9 last year. We are 12 now.
Yeah, but but I'm talking about passing grades. Let's not go into the argument now. What I'm saying to you is that the minister says something substantively. You can do all the stuff you want to do with regards to the MCD scorecard. If corruption, the issue of corruption, cannot be dealt with, you have not done anything.
Surely.
Just like the Bible will tell me, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all the righteousness and all shall be added unto you. The most of this is the fight against corruption. My thinking that we can do whatever we can do. If we fail in the fight of corruption, we have not done anything at all. Our partner, our traditional partners, in spite of this new report card, sanctioned 3 of our senior officials for corruption. What does that tell us?
So, meanwhile, before you get there,
Go ahead. Yes.
no, can you announce what station is live on? A lot of people are texting me. How can I get it live? So, can you please announce the list of media that I have it live? Just very important. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you announce it, please?
Okay, we'll announce that.
All right. Okay. So I just want to do. First of all, I'm sorry for coming late. I had to go through traffic, but I'd like to congratulate the government of Liberia for quite an important milestone. I think that.
Okay, before you continue, let me just announce the media outlets that.
Sure.
Okay, we got this program being carried on OK FM. Truth FM, Freedom FM, Sky FM, Cool FM, Prime FM, Voice of Liberia, Banner FM, Hot FM, and all across the country through several community radio stations. Okay. This show is also being carried out live on Linan TV, KMTV, Front Page Africa, DTV, Sam TV, and you name them.
Okay, so that is an important aspect. I was just reading Ghana. Ghana inflation going up is tapped almost about 37%, and the CD has dropped in value about 40%. So I'm looking at a parallel trying to create a juxtapose the two economies, and so I'm looking at some of the external shocks and some of the internal domestic policy choices and decisions they made. So I'm trying to ask the minister, how can you contextualize these two economies and give us a context on how these external global shocks, whether it's COVID, whether a contraction of the economy, they have contracted the economy severely. And the issue of Ghana, right now there's a protest on the street of Ghana. In fact, November 5th protest, massive protest, resignation of the demanding resignation of Nana Kodur. So they basically, not only that, the protesters have gone one step and said, look, we do not want intervention IMF. Because the leaders, the finance minister has, to some extent, saw that model as a complete overbearing Western economic intervention model. And so he played this populist rhetoric. So we have a situation where we have COVID, we have external shock, we have some contraction, we have inflation of around 30, one-third of that has significantly reduced. So I'll try to start with that. I have some really serious questions for the minister, but I want to lay some foundational discussions around what are the distinctions between the two and what are some of the choices that were made. And I'll say that and also look at, I just want to weave them into a common thread. One of the issues is, and I'm concerned because in the scorecard, you are the central bank is responsible for monetary policy. You are the chairman of the fiscal policy. And they are seeing fiscal policy, they basically downgrade their fiscal policy. So basically they are saying, you're not doing well. So they are saying, Mr. Twe, you've been doing well, but you're not doing well. So if you look at some of the indicators, there were a rise and a decline. Mm-hmm. So there's fluctuating. So this ship is not a smooth ride, like Tima said. It is on a stormy and a rocky sea, and it's being piloted, it's being captained. And so the captain got to tell her why this time there's no anchor. How do we anchor this ship? So I think Tima asked a fundamental question that says, Tima, your celebration with realistic understanding of what is modesty. So I'll lay that foundational question. I have other questions, but I'd like to give you a kudos because our own spoon when you came there and made a commitment. It sounds prophetic, and we should give people credit. When we condemn people, we should have the courage and the decency.
So you've been condemning me?
No, I don't be condemning you. I'm a general public.
No,
if your answer is condemning, we'll be condemned.
Okay, let's. These are important questions. And look, we're not making the MCC scorecard as the be-all and the end-all. Okay. We are saying it's indicative of a trend, of a direction. We're not saying there are 20 indicators that capture different aspects, investing in people, democracy, rights, control of corruption, all of that, economic freedom. We're saying the trend looks like the country is moving upward. If you didn't look at the MCC scorecard and you listen to a perception of the country and propaganda, and somebody reported to you, they say, we hear that nothing is happening in the country. Now, what the scorecard has done is that the people who don't pay attention to every day, they all of a sudden look at all the scores and say, maybe the reports we get about the country are not factual. So maybe there's something there. So I want to pay attention to what the government is doing. That's why he's saying, how do we get to all these points, all right? Fiscal policy. What we call fiscal policy under the score is basically the government deficit, meaning the borrowing. This is it's been a tough indicator for, I think we passed it once in the last 15 years or so. It's tough because as the government gets grant and budget support, and part of that is also loan. So we have a fiscal policy. We don't borrow from local banks, but we calculate the World Bank budget support, the African Development Bank, the loan elements of that will fund our budget. So, if you go above a certain deficit, then you go below the median. When you look at the fiscal policy score, you do see it almost touching. So we are almost, actually, we thought we were going to pass. So it's 3 dots. You can pull the graph where you see 3 dots moving up relative to the 2 years. We are almost at the median. The median is negative 3.3. I think we are negative 3.6. So we almost there. We thought we were going to be there. And this is the fight that we are on with the IMF. One of the indicators we track is primary deficit, fiscal deficit under the IMF program. So when the MCC board looks at fiscal policy, when they read the IMF report, we pass fiscal policy, but they do see the dot and say, if you just control a little bit tighter, you just jump over. That control tighter means when you control tight, when you stay within that tight, when you stay there, sometimes I let us say, my man, if I pass fiscal policy, I don't know whether I will be Minister of Finance. Because that means you're tightening. You're tightening. So sometimes you pass other things, you continue to fight. Your government has to spend. We say the president said no borrowing from the central bank, no borrowing, the law said no borrowing from banks. So we have to live within our means. So this is where you see when we control the spending that way, then we want to stay within the margin of the deficit. But if you're a politician who don't care about the deficit, you will break the deficit and just say, look, we're doing good things, we don't care about deficit. Where you're going to make sure that if you don't care about deficit, you get into debt crisis. Now, he asked about some of the questions, what's happening in the region. Look, Ghana's going through some very tough time, and I empathize with my dear friend and brother. He's been a leader among finance ministers on the continent. So we all are reaching out to him to wish him well in this difficult time. I've been through that. We know what we inherited here. Most of the things we didn't do these things. You know, we met them, we had to fix them, along with the central bank and through the IMF program. So we know what it is. You know, I met Professor Paul Collier, who wrote The Bottom Billion in Washington, D.C. in 2018. He said, look, I tell presidents and finance ministers across Africa that you have to make tough choices, especially if you're a new government. You guys are new. In fact, you, Liberia, you have 6 years. So 6 years is an eternity in politics. Do whatever you can do in 2 years. Anything you can do, put people in the street, let them protest. If you don't fix it in 2 years and you try to fix it in 4 years, you're out of power. That's my only advice I get to you. The president heeded that advice. You saw people here in the streets, right? We're fixing a difficult macro. Inflation was shooting. Tough choices we made. Stay within your limits. That's all we did. I mean, we didn't do anything extra. We just followed the fundamental advice of fundamental macroeconomic fundamentalism that were happening in this country under President George Manuel Weah. Reserves are up. The monetary policy and fiscal policy are coordinating to control inflation, to control fiscal, all the stuff you see.
But Minister Tui, I want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
The report is also saying these things, you cannot romanticize them. These are not fanciful thoughts and number. It has to do with trickle-down effect to ordinary people. So basically, they are saying you're not investing in your people, that you have abandoned your people, that they are left to rot in deprivation, and that you are celebrating numbers in the sky. And on the ground, these numbers have real-life impact on the life of ordinary people. That's what MCC telling you.
Yeah, because
They say
in
you're not investing in your
particular
people.
emphasis on human capital.
That's why you left them behind. The economy is moving while they're behind.
That's right.
And another thing, let me add up to that. The 3 women or 4 women that went to your house to talk about
Oh, is that 20?
or 20 women that went to your house to talk about
Check our five.
the problem is we can make all the noise, we can give all the data if you can, but how does this impact? If you look in the spirit in the column of inflation, that we don't invest in our human capital, we don't invest in. How does the common man in the street, including the 25 women I went to, interpret this in the concept of the bread and butter issue?
That's right. It's all about the bread and butter issue.
Surely.
It's about nothing else. Investing in people.
How do you tell them about this success?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So
how do they believe it? How do they take it and believe it and make it work?
What they need to know is that to invest in education, you have to first find the fiscal space. Number one, you have to find the money to invest in education. When our budget is 500 million, was that 500 million, 550? Except we as a people decide and say, you know what? Since salary is significant share of the budget for us to invest in our people, what can we do? Because debt and salary eats up our entire budget. So when you're standing at 550, you cannot invest in human capital. The investment in human capital over the next 5 years, the government has to make is 500 million, 589 million under a new education sector plan. We have to invest 589 million over the next 5 years. That means we must find 100 million every year to put in human capital. The government found 125 million over the last 2 years, fiscal space under the president. We call it fiscal space mobilization. Domestic revenue is up because of that. So we took the domestic revenue to the highest level ever. So it matters for the Liberian people. What are we doing with this fiscal space? We are spending 51 million on elections. If we were not spending 51 million on elections, if for some reason somebody came from somewhere and said, look, don't spend 51 million on election. We gave you 51 million for your election. We will choose, we will talk, and the government could put 30 million in education today and put the other 20 in infrastructure and put the other one elsewhere. That's it. So we are limited because 51 million we found, we are constrained to fund our election. We found additional 65 million. What are we constrained to invest in? I was in Abidjan recently. You saw me signing. That money is going for CLSG lines. I appeal to the Liberian people on, I think it was on your show here, the last time I was here. Now, we should not spend 40 million just for 2 months and go to the rainy season. Let us keep that. We'll put the infrastructure in place, we'll arrange with the Ivorian government, and then next dry season will be difficult. That's the mechanism. Liberian people heard it, and they bought that idea. It's a waste. So that's it. So as we're mobilizing fiscal space, if we're standing on 70,000 people working for the government, we hold them. We've rationalized the wages, so the waste that was there, driver making the same all over the country, accountants making the same, everybody almost in the same. There's still small issues, but we've cleaned that and we've been celebrated for that. So when you keep that wage force, you can't cut it down again to say you're cutting the wage to raise pay. You have to stay on that workforce of 7,000 to move forward. The only other thing you can do is to raise domestic revenue.
Mr. Minister,
No,
Mr. Minister.
No, listen. No, listen. The people need to know that to pay for. I just told the people to pay for education, to change human capital. And as a country, since the end of the World Affairs, we've not taken a serious look at education, at human capital in the country. We came from the war mentality. NGOs were here. We do spot checks here. The budget there. We're doing small thing every year. 14%, 12%, 11%. We need to spend 20% of the budget on education.
So Mr. Minister, here's what I want to say.
So that's why it matters for the Liberian people.
Right.
So when we do this process, we will grow, we will find more money, we end the tax expenditure, the free things that people are getting. We're working with multinational companies so that they pay more taxes, so that we reduce the incentives, so more money can come. So the roles that you see here matters for the people. Look, I tell people, you can do nothing in this economy if you don't fix road and electricity.
But Mr. Minister, before Kyatama comes in, we are not what we used to be before. According to you, you're still talking about 500 plus. You told us, I mean, our budget is performing at a level 800 plus now.
Yeah.
So how come we're not able to find
But
all
I
this
just
money?
told you, sir, we found 120 million, and I show you what we're doing for air.
The 120 million you say was something allocated for 3 years.
No, what I'm saying, we have mobilized an additional 120 million that was not there. For this year, we are constrained to spend 51 on election. So let's take the 121 million and you tell the president, don't fund election and don't fund LEC. What will you do with the 121? Tell me, let the Liberian people divide the 121 that we discovered.
So, Minister, historically in this country,
Yeah.
those who the movement of CDC was born out of the downtrodden masses.
That's correct.
Those who were left to rot in complete humiliating deprivation.
Yeah.
And those you are the vehicle through which, like you call it, a vertical ascent. So this is their moment.
That's correct.
But the excuses provided by the oligarchs, those who run the country, they always justify why the poor people are left behind. So you have adopted that model of explanation or justification that because of budgetary constraint, we created a parallel with Ghana. Ghana, there's not only external shock, but domestic choices. I think on your side, domestic choices look impressive for a lot of people because the companies got external shock. But you are justifying why they should live in suffering. You are romanticizing their pain. You are intellectualizing their hunger. So basically, you are saying
I found $120 million. The president found $120 million. I'm just telling you what the country is doing with the 120. If the Liberian people believe that we should not fund the election with this money, and we should not pay for CLSG lines with too much money, and that are prepared to live in darkness, I can tell you, if there's a global referendum consensus, that we use the money for other development and stay in the darkness, of course the government will listen to the people. So what you need to talk about is that we can't rest on the 120. So for this 2023, for the next 2023 budget, the 120 is committed. The 2024, that fiscal space is still there. Election not going to be next year. So the 51 money is just for 2023. That 51 million is still there. What the question the public want to know now is that, Mr. Minister, by the time we make these one-off investment, we are happy that you're telling us so there's a big fiscal space because you're not doing 51 million in next, it's a one-time thing. So that 51 there. The legislature then have to take the fiscal space and move to human capital, move it to education.
So,
That's it.
Mr. Minister, LRA has done very impressive work in terms of expanding the revenue.
That's correct.
Space.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to ask you, how can you transfer that towards issues that are important?
How can that be translated
I'm just
to
telling
the betterment of the people?
How you
No,
get
the point is, and a little go back to
the public listening to this thing.
Of course,
Because I say we have found 120 and you still keep asking
You
me.
tell us where.
No,
It could be external funding,
What do you mean?
intervention. Where
I
you find
said
it?
domestic revenue 120.
Okay.
And I'm telling you what we're doing with that. But you still keep saying, what are you doing for the people?
No.
When we invest in electricity,
It's for the people.
is it not for the people?
So
What we pay
Minister,
for election.
It's a broad statement. It's a
are
broad
you
statement.
saying this
Electricity.
$21 million we have allotted for election is stopping our human capacity or human capital development?
Because when you don't do one thing, you don't have money to do another thing. I'm just telling you the free space. Government salary is 297 million. Government debt, domestic, by the time you add debt,
Per annum.
per annum, 297 million. So if you're asking me to take money from somewhere to put in education, except you're asking me to take 50 million for government salary and move it to education, that means I'll put government workers
Okay,
down.
Mr.
So
Minister.
when we say fiscal space mobilization, we say we stay on salary, we stay on debt, we stay on many of the small things. Let's look for new money. Now, the revenue authority, the government have found new money.
Okay.
The first year we find the new money, what we're doing with it? We got big challenges to solve.
Mr. Minister, look. When we saying,
Why are you laughing?
Mr. Minister,
That bread and butter issue we're talking
Mr.
about.
Minister,
I'm talking about
the people, the choices important to those who are feeling the pain are the best choices, and not the choices of a bureaucrat. I come in. Hold your horses. And one of the things they said in the report is that government effectiveness was rated very low. This MCC scorecard rated the effectiveness of the government very low. And that is where I was seeing having that money and placing the risk.
that has nothing to do with government effectiveness.
No.
Tell me
No.
ask me what is government effectiveness?
Let me speak for myself.
No,
Then you
no,
speak for
but I will
yourself.
not allow you to
But
get
you know
away
what you
with
know.
it.
When you're ready to explain, you explain it.
Yes, man.
Let me ask
So,
this
so
question,
I'm
Minister.
speaking for Kiatama. I to speak for Toy.
No. Katama has to speak what the main America will hear and what the main Russia will
But
hear.
Kiatama is what the report said. Not Kiatama is the author of the report.
No.
You see,
The author of the report said government is not effective.
Mr.
That's what I said.
Kiatama,
That's not what I said.
This is what I was.
Make your statement.
This is
That's
what
what I said. Not what I said.
This is where I was going.
Now, let me just.
If we look at this
Timas, can you
scorecard,
allow Kiatama to learn? I think he's still in flight.
Yes, I'm saying fly.
okay.
Don't disrupt my fly.
No.
Let me get
Even though you're a crash land.
I control the
That's
pump.
a
and
subject.
control-
Let me say I will crash land. Okay. The guy at the airport said no current at the I will crash land. if you guys put no current, I'm going to crash land. But here's the thing, Mr. Joe, what we're trying to say is that we are 5 years in the administration of President Weah. We do agree that we had liquidity challenges. Now we reduce that. There's macroeconomic stability. We see a lot of things. There's no denying. But some of the issues are just fundamental. The guy who was hungry, who out of job, does not understand these numbers you're spewing. Because it does not affect the life. The guy who did not get a job, the guy who cannot pay his children's school fee, the guy who has not been able to increase his wage, expand his opportunity to feed his family, will not understand it. So when you tell me you go to the Elections Commission 5 years, they say, okay, for 5 years I've been waiting for something to change in my personal life. All I hear, that amount. So when we say investing in the pool, education for girls are down. So we are not manufacturing or imagining numbers. So we're trying to push it to the what to tell us because a lot of people are listening.
I am explaining to you, but you don't want to understand something. That anybody who listens and understand finance and economics and this stuff will understand it.
But
in the last 2-3 years, we did not have the money.
Is an economist.
That guy who is not an economist
He's an
is
economic
not paying school fee because we